Phaeron Onkari'kth, lesser ally of Trazyn the Infinite, accesses the inner archive vault of Solemnace under personal invitation. 998.M41. He has been admitted to the outer hall before. He has never been admitted past it. Trazyn meets him at the inner threshold and gestures him through. Onkari'kth steps into a chamber the size of a continent. In its center, on a raised dais of black stone, sits the golden throne. The emperor's body is on it. The body is breathing. The body is restored. Not as it was, restored fully, in the original chassis, in original armor. Onkari'kth turns to Trazyn. Trazyn says, "Round 2041, same divergence point, new variables." The name Phaeron Onkari'kth does not appear in any published Necron record. We have given him to you as a witness because the chamber needs a witness. The chamber is canonical. The throne is canonical. Whether anyone other than Trazyn has ever been admitted past the outer hall, that the records do not say.
What the records do say is this. Trazyn the Infinite is a Necron Overlord of the Nihilakh Dynasty. He is the self-proclaimed Archaeovist of the Solemnace Galleries. He has held this title across editions 5, 7, 8, 9, and the current 10th of Codex Necrons. His tomb world, Solemnace, sits at the rimward edge of the Eastern Fringe of the galaxy. The planet itself is not natural. Lexicanum's entry on Solemnace describes it as an artificial construct, a planet-sized Dyson shell variant whose outer surface consists of untold amounts of nanomachines. Orbital mirrors collect the world's excess energy and redirect it back to form an artificial sun and an artificial atmosphere. Solemnace is, in other words, a machine that pretends to be a planet. The pretense is for visitors. It convinces them they have arrived somewhere natural. They have not. Beneath that outer shell lie the prismatic galleries. These are not corridors, they are chambers.
They are winding chambers of statuary, except the statues are not statues. The Warhammer 40,000 wiki entry on Trazyn is exact on this point. The prismatic galleries are populated not with mere sculpture, but with living beings transmuted into hard-light holograms by arcane technology. The exhibits are conscious. The exhibits are aware. The exhibits cannot leave. Some of them know they are exhibits. Some of them do not. The Codex does not tell us the ratio. The galleries themselves are organized, not catalogued. The distinction matters. A catalog groups things by category. Weapons here, prisoners there, artifacts elsewhere. An organization groups them by relationship, what each item means in proximity to the others. Trazyn's galleries are organized. The Macarius diorama sits near the cipher entry. The cipher entry sits near the gene stock collection. The gene stock collection sits near the throne chamber. Walk the galleries in order, and you do not walk through a museum. You walk through an argument. The argument is unstated. The visitor is expected to find it. And this is where the official record stops being comfortable. Because if you survey Trazyn's documented collection across the Codex editions, what you find is not a museum. A museum acquires what is durable. A museum acquires what is finished. Trazyn acquires the opposite. Trazyn acquires what is about to be irreplaceable. He arrives at events the moment before they end and takes the thing that cannot otherwise be preserved. And he has been doing this for a very long time. Consider what is established to be in there. The Sanguinor, the angelic emanation tied to Sanguinius's bloodline, in a stasis field on Solemnace. This is canonical and appears across multiple editions of the Necron lore. The Sanguinor is not a metaphor.
The Sanguinor is, by canon, an extension of a Primarch's psychic legacy that manifests in the Blood Angels when they need it most.
To have the Sanguinor in stasis is to hold the manifestation of a Primarch's legacy inert. The Imperium has not noticed this. The Blood Angels have not noticed this. The Blood Angels have continued to fight as if their Primarch's emanation was still available to them. It is available when Trazyn permits. The death of Lord Solar Macarius Gallery, a holographic diorama of Macarius's death, populated by Imperial Guardsmen whose uniforms, per the Codex itself, are 300 standard years astray from historical fact, because Trazyn preferred the embellished version to the accurate one. Read that again. The Lord Solar of the Macarian Crusade, one of the largest imperial military expansions in recorded history, died, and Trazyn was at the death close enough to capture the moment in light. The Macarian Crusade is canonical. The death is canonical. Trazyn's presence at the death is implied by the existence of the diorama. The Codex never asks how he got there. It never asks why he was already there. The last daughter of the Siam Han craft world, named by community shorthand across the Codex collection lists. Siam Han is one of the great Eldar craft worlds. To hold its last daughter is to hold a closed loop of Eldar psychic lineage. The line cannot continue. The line cannot end completely either, because she still exists. She is suspended between the two states. Cypher, the fallen Dark Angel and Lord of the Fallen, attributed by community summaries of Codex Necrons 9th edition. Cypher is the Imperium's most wanted fallen, pursued by the Dark Angels across 10,000 years, glimpsed at the moments that matter, never apprehended. The Dark Angels have not apprehended him because, by community canon attribution, he is not always available to be apprehended. He is in a tesseract labyrinth on Solemnace. He is released, sometimes, to where Trazyn needs him to be. Multiple Heresy-era artifacts of psychic resonance, items from the period when the Emperor and his Primarchs and the great heresy choices were still being made. Lost Primarch-adjacent material in concentrations the published lore does not entirely account for. The Codex describes the gene stocks, the relic fragments, the partial records, without ever totaling them. The totals, if you do total them, are striking, and in the inner vault, established by this channel's prior video on the subject, the one titled, Trazyn has repaired the golden throne in his display case, and he's waiting. A throne-grade chassis, restored, functional. Sitting in a chamber the Adeptus Mechanicus has spent centuries failing to replicate. The Fabricator General of Mars died trying to understand the live throne's failure modes. The Mechanicus issued the institutional equivalent of a formal surrender. The Imperium then sent a delegation to Kamara, to the Drukhari, seeking expertise in ancient webway technology the Imperium did not possess. The Drukhari knew things. They did not share everything. Trazyn did not need to ask the Drukhari. Trazyn already had the chassis. Trazyn already had the chassis working. But here is what nobody mentions. The pattern of what Trazyn has is not random. If you list his exhibits, every single one of them is either psychically active, warp-anchored, or tied to a specific decision point in Imperial history. The Sanguinor is psychic. Cypher is warp-anchored. The Macarius Gallery captures the moment of an Imperial Crusade's collapse. The throne chassis is the most psychically loaded device in the galaxy. The Siam-Han specimen sits at the intersection of Eldar psychic lineage and a craft world extinction. This is not a collection. This is a parts list. And the question is, a parts list for what? The community has a name for the answer, and the Codex has the canonical capacity for it. The community calls it
the acuity of solemnness. The Codex calls it the celestial orrery, the Necron observational device on Thanatos that Trazyn is documented to access. Per Goonhammer's summary of Codex Necrons 9th edition, during the 13th Black Crusade, when Trazyn's collection on solemnness was thrown into upheaval, the Necron Lord investigated the cause via the celestial orrery, and there discovered the pylons of Cadia were holding back the tide of the warp. The Codex is explicit. He saw it before the Imperium did. He arrived at Cadia with reinforcements drawn from his Tesseract labyrinths before the Imperium asked for them. The official record describes this as investigation. The behavior it documents is forecast. The accounts diverge here.
Whether the acuity of solemnness, if it exists as a discrete ability, extends to past and future sight or only one direction, the Codex does not name in those terms. The community reading is bidirectional. The strict canon reading is that Orican the Diviner, Trazyn's millennia-long rival from Robert Rath's 2020 novel The Infinite and the Divine, is the chronomancer, the future sight specialist, and Trazyn's domain is preservation of the past. But Trazyn's behavior keeps doing what only forward sight can explain. Flag the dispute, hold it open, and note what the dispute does not change. Whatever the mechanism, the documented behavior is the same. Trazyn arrives early. Trazyn arrives at the right moment. Trazyn takes the thing that will not survive otherwise. He does this on a timescale of millennia and across a galaxy of events. No collector of curiosities behaves this way. A collector of curiosities collects what they encounter. Trazyn collects what is going to matter, which brings us to the behavioral anomaly the Codex never quite explains. Across the 9th edition Codex Necrons, Trazyn is shown intervening in imperial events at specific moments, narrative inflection points where one decision goes one way and the entire downstream history changes. He intervenes at Cadia. He intervenes during certain campaigns the Codex describes only categorically. He does not intervene when the Imperium begs the Necrons for help against chaos elsewhere, where the help would have been obvious and proportionate and welcome. Why? Why this event and not that one? Why this century and not the one before? The Codex does not say. Bell of Lost Souls, in their multi-year features on Trazyn's collection, frames it as collection-motivated. He intervenes when something irreplaceable is at risk. That is partly true. It does not fully account for the pattern. Because Trazyn also intervenes at events where the prize is not yet a unique artifact, but a decision branch. A moment where the Imperium is about to commit one way or the other, and Trazyn's small intervention shifts which way it commits. Consider this. A collector intervenes to acquire. Trazyn intervenes, sometimes, to influence. The Codex never uses the word influence, but the documented behavior is influence. And the question becomes, influence toward what? And there is a second behavioral anomaly. Trazyn's interventions, when they occur, are always small. He does not deploy a Necron dynasty against a chaos war host. He releases a single Tesseract labyrinth into a precise locale. He sends a specific exhibit to a specific battle for a specific duration. The footprint is calibrated. It is the footprint of someone who already knows what the minimum intervention is. Because he has already watched, somewhere, what happens when the intervention is larger, and what happens when it is smaller, and what happens when it does not occur. A collector does not optimize interventions across counterfactuals. A simulation operator does. And there is a third. Trazyn appears, when he appears, alongside personnel the Codex frames as his
allies of convenience, Necron cryptex from neighboring dynasties, occasional Phaerons of lesser holdings, the rare imperial collaborator like Belisarius Cawl. None of them are admitted to the inner archive vault. None of them have been documented as having seen what Onkari'kth saw at the start of this video. The outer galleries are a public theater. The inner vault is a private workshop. The Codex tells us the public theater exists and shows us a few of its exhibits. The Codex does not tell us what is in the workshop.
It tells us only that the workshop exists, and that it is locked, and that the Archaeovist works there alone, which is the question this video exists to ask. What would explain all of the above? The disproportionate concentration of warp-active and psychically anchored relics in his vault, a parts list. The selective interventions at narrative branch points, not collection, influence. The documented foreknowledge of where the branch points will fall, acuity, orrery, the chronomantic skill set he is not supposed to have but functionally demonstrates. The throne-grade chassis sitting in the inner vault, restored to functional state by methods the Imperium cannot match. The simulation thesis is this: Trazyn is not archiving the Imperium. Trazyn is running it. Not the live Imperium that the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Adeptus Custodes and the trillions of Imperial citizens experience as their reality. That Imperium is real. Trazyn is not a deity and the live universe is not fake.
The simulation reading the audience has produced, and the channel must flag this is the audience's reading, not direct Codex assertion, is that Trazyn is running an iterated playthrough of the 30th through 42nd millennia inside the inner archive vault of Solemnace, using the restored throne and the restored emperor's body as the live anchor, comparing outcomes across iterations, and choosing branch points to influence in the live reality outside. The mechanism for this would be straightforward, given what the Codex has already given us. The hard light hologram technology that populates the prismatic galleries is already capable of running conscious beings as transmuted representations. Scale that mechanism up. Apply it to a closed chamber the size of a continent. Anchor it to a restored throne and a restored emperor's body as the central reference point. Populate it with hologram projections of the major figures and forces of the live universe. Initiate. Watch the iteration play out.
Reset. Adjust the variable. Initiate again. Round 1. Round 2. Round 2041. The line Trazyn speaks at the start of this video, same divergence point, new variables, is the line of someone who has done this many times. It is the line of a researcher. It is not the line of a curator. The audience comment that built this video under the channel's prior Trazyn Throne video, 3 likes captured in the public record, reads, Trazyn is actually playing Warhammer 30 to 40k just like how we do LOL. Under the Alpha Primus video, 3 likes. Trazyn the Archaeovist holds the secrets of the past and the future which are all open for him to see through his held exhibits. He basically owns a bunch of quasi-TARDISes. 2 videos, 2 audience comments, 1 observation. Trazyn is playing. The Codex shows him collecting. The audience saw him simulating. And the audience may be right. Because consider what this means for the Golden Throne. There are 2 thrones, per this reading.
One is in the Imperial Palace on Holy Terra. That throne, the Imperium worships. That throne, the Adeptus Mechanicus has spent 10,000 years attempting to maintain. That throne, the Fabricator General of Mars died trying to repair. The channel's parent video documented this. The institutional surrender of the Mechanicus to the throne's progressive failure modes. The delegation to Camorra for ancient webway expertise.
the Drukhari knowledge of the technology that the Imperium does not have. That throne is the live reality. That throne is the one whose failure or success the Imperium experiences as its actual history. The second throne sits on a dais of black stone in the inner archive vault of Solemnace, restored, functioning, sitting in a chamber the size of a continent. That throne is what the brief is reading as the test bed. The simulation runs there. Failure modes are induced. The cascade is allowed to play out. Trazyn watches it.
He notes which intervention prevents the cascade. Then he makes a small, precise intervention in the live universe to prevent the same cascade there. Consider what this implies for the events the live Imperium has experienced. Every failure mode the live throne has approached and recovered from over the last 10,000 years, every near collapse, every shudder, every century in which the lights of human-occupied space dimmed and then restabilized, may have already played out in the vault. In one iteration, the cascade went to completion. In another iteration, the cascade was arrested by an intervention nobody in the live universe attributes to its actual source. Trazyn watched both. Trazyn chose. The live Imperium experienced only the outcome. The record on this point is contested. Whether the throne in his vault is a parallel copy maintained alongside the original, or the original itself switched at some unrecorded moment, the Codex does not specify.
The audience comment thread on the parent video splits between the two readings. The brief's argument is test bed. The swap is possible, but it has not yet been documented. Flag the ambiguity. The Imperium believes its throne is the original. The Imperium is correct, for now. Now consider what this means for the Emperor. The body in the Imperial Palace is the original. 10,000 years of progressive decay on the throne in the Sanctum Imperialis. Documented in every codex and every novel that touches the subject. The Imperium experiences the Emperor as the figure whose maintenance defines their religion, their economy, and their political continuity. The body in Trazyn's vault is restored, breathing, repaired in the chassis, restored in the armor, the original chassis, the original armor, restored to function in ways the Imperium has been told are impossible by their own institutional voices. The Fabricator General did not have access to whatever Trazyn used. Call, who has access to more pre-heresy and Necron-adjacent technology than any human Magos in history, has not produced this capability either. What the brief argues is that this restoration creates a structural option Trazyn has not yet exercised. If Trazyn ever decides the live reality of the Imperium is past saving, if the iterations in the vault keep producing the same terminal cascade and no intervention in the live universe is preventing it, he could swap the bodies. The Emperor of the live reality has been one decision away from substitution for an unknown number of centuries. He has not done this. The Codex does not state he has done this. The video does not claim he has done this. The argument is that the option is structurally available. Trazyn possesses both the restored body and the restored chassis. The capacity exists. The intent has not been demonstrated.
What he is waiting for, the brief argues,
is whether the live iteration will succeed or fail without intervention at that scale. And consider the asymmetry of this position. The Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's personal guardians, the most proximate institution to the throne, believe they are the last barrier between the Emperor and substitution. They are correct only as far as their own institutional reach extends. Their reach extends to the Sanctum Imperialis on Terra. It does not extend to Solemnace. There is an institution closer to the Emperor's substitutability than the Custodes are, and that institution is one Necron Overlord, whose existence the Custodes cannot meaningfully address. The Custodes do not know this. The Codex has not told them. The Codex has told us by implication through the existence of the restored body in the inner vault. Which brings us to what this means for the era of ruin.
The current narrative arc of the Imperium, the post-Cadian collapse, the cicatrix maledictum tearing the galaxy along its length, the return of Robute Guilliman from his stasis sarcophagus, the awakening of Lion L. Johnson from the rock, the rise of the tyrant of Badab, the discovery of the Star Child, the Indomitus Crusade across the Gulf. Every event the Imperium experiences as the unfolding present is, per this reading, simultaneously something else. It is, in part, the consequence of decisions Trazyn made in earlier iterations of the simulation. The branch points he influenced in the live reality were chosen because, in the vault, he watched the unrestrained alternative play out and decided against it. The era of ruin is the live iteration that resulted from those interventions. It is not the worst of the iterations. It is the one Trazyn has, so far, not rolled back. And it is also, in part, fresh divergence.
There are events the simulation has not yet projected, branch points that have just opened.
Some of those branch points Trazyn is watching in real time. He has not decided whether to intervene. The Imperium is in the gap between his observation and his choice. The brief's framing on this is precise and deserves repeating. The live universe is not fake. The iterations are not parallel universes. The events the Imperium experiences are real. The grief is real. The losses are real. The trillions who die in the cicatrix's wake die actually. The simulation runs alongside reality, not instead of it. Trazyn is using the vault to forecast which interventions in the live universe would change the live outcome, and then he is making those interventions selectively. The live universe is the universe. The vault is the laboratory. The Imperium lives inside the experiment without knowing the experiment exists. That is the only distinction. It is not a small one.
It is also not what the audience comment was warning about.
The audience comment was warning that the experimenter has more agency over the outcome than anyone in the Imperium is permitted to know. Skip list discipline matters here. The brief is explicit. The video must not name the specific divergence points Trazyn has influenced. The Codex does not give them by name. To assign them specifically would be invention. The categorical framing is the correct framing. Some events the Imperium experiences as their unfolding history are choices Trazyn has already made in iterations the audience does not see. Some are choices he has not yet decided. The boundary between the two is not visible to the Imperium because the Imperium has no awareness it is being watched at this resolution at all. A second discipline. The live reality is not fake. The audience comments did not call it fake. The brief does not call it fake. The simulation is not parallel universe theory.
The iterations are not other realities. They are projections inside Trazyn's vault. Closed system playouts of what would happen under varied conditions, used as forecasts for what to do in the single live universe everyone is sharing. The Imperium is real. The Emperor is real. The decisions are real. Trazyn is operating one layer above the live reality, not replacing it. A third discipline, the most important. The brief argues that Trazyn could swap the emperors. It does not argue that he has. The Emperor of mankind on the throne of the imperial palace is the original emperor, decaying as he has always been decaying.
The breathing, restored body in Solemnace is the option. The option has not been taken. Trazyn has not told the Imperium the option exists. He never will. And this last discipline points at what the iterated simulation reading actually means for the figures the Imperium reveres.
Guilliman returned from his sarcophagus to find a galaxy he does not recognize.
The Codex frames this return as a desperate, last-moment salvation. The simulation reading reframes it. Guilliman returns at the moment Trazyn calculated would maximize the live iteration's chance of stabilization. Whether Trazyn caused the return or merely permitted it to happen, flag this. The Codex does not resolve it. Lion L. Johnson, awakened from his 10,000-year sleep with the casket the Emperor gave him still sealed, channels prior video on the subject established the casket contains gene stocks of brothers the Lion has never met. The simulation reading reframes the awakening. The Lion wakes in the iteration where the Lion is needed. Trazyn has watched the iterations where the Lion did not wake. In those, the cascade produced different outcomes. Outcomes the live universe does not have to experience because Trazyn has selected this one. The Lion does not know any of this.
The Dark Angels do not know any of this.
Cypher, who walks alongside the Lion now, may know more than he says. Cypher's silences have always been suggestive. They are more suggestive when one of his possible explanations is, "I have been in Trazyn's vault and I have seen the iterations and the Lion's wakefulness is one of them." The Tyrant of Badab, Luft Huron, now the Red Corsair Huron Blackheart, a renegade whose continued existence the Imperium has never explained because the explanation does not fit Imperial doctrine. The simulation reading reframes Huron as a variable Trazyn is observing across iterations. The dispute is whether Trazyn is letting Huron run as a control variable, or whether the live Huron is itself a Trazyn-selected branch outcome. The Codex does not resolve this. Flag and hold.
The point worth holding is this. A figure whose persistent existence has no canonical explanation is exactly the kind of figure who, in a simulation framework, is being run for forecasting purposes. Huron is not a mystery the Imperium has failed to solve. Huron is a variable the Imperium has not been informed about. The Star Child, recently returned per the channel's earlier coverage and the 2025 Grey Knights Codex revelation. The simulation reading reframes the Star Child's emergence as an event Trazyn either anticipated or caused. The boundary is, again, not visible from outside the vault. The fact of the emergence is canonical. The interpretation of it is the channels. And the recurrent question across all of these figures is the same. The Imperium experiences each return, each emergence, each renegade persistence, each Primarch awakening as a distinct event with its own causes and its own consequences.
The simulation reading reframes all of them as instances of the same underlying process. A process in which Trazyn is selecting which iteration of which figure becomes the live version, and the live version proceeds from there. And Robert Rath's 2020 novel, The Infinite and the Divine, the only Black Library novel to feature Necrons as protagonists, establishes the interior voice of Trazyn that makes all of this plausible. Rath writes Trazyn as obsessive. Rath writes Trazyn as vain. Rath writes Trazyn as the kind of mind that frames preservation as both salvation and ownership simultaneously, and feels no contradiction in the framing. A mind like that, running a vault the size of a continent, with the restored emperor on a restored throne, and a parts list of warp-active relics surrounding them, is not running a museum. A mind like that is running a game. The novel's plot itself is corroborative on this point.
Trazyn and Orican the Diviner, Chronomancer, Future Sight Specialist, Trazyn's millennia-long rival, compete across thousands of years for an artifact tied to Necron evolution. Black Library's own product summary describes the rivalry as one that ends civilizations, reshapes timelines, and changes both forever. The Necrons of Solemnace are not strangers to civilizational manipulation. They have already done it to themselves and to each other. The leap from that established behavior to running iterated playthroughs of an Imperial-era target is not large. The leap is, in fact, the same operation at a different scale. The audience comment that built this video used the word playing. That is not casual language. That is the audience naming the operational profile correctly. Trazyn is playing. The pieces are real. The board is real. The opponent is the future itself, and the Imperium is on the board. It does not know it is on the board. It does not know there is a board.
Note what the simulation reading does not require. It does not require the Imperium to be wrong about any of its lived history. The Cadian Gate fell. The pylons failed. Guilliman returned. The cicatrix tore the galaxy in half. All of that is real, and all of that happened. What the simulation reading adds is one layer of additional causality the Imperium has not been told about. Some of what the Imperium experienced was already pre-played in the vault. Some of what is about to happen is being pre-played there now. Trazyn is not changing the rules of the live universe. Trazyn is making selective interventions inside the existing rules, based on forecasts that come from running variants in a closed laboratory. And the operational difference between that and the Imperium's own future sight institutions, the astropaths, the navigators, the Sisters of Silence's blank-driven counter-divination, the Inquisition's psyker prophets, is purely one of resolution.
The Imperium's institutions get glimpses. Trazyn gets full iterations. They both forecast. He forecasts in higher resolution and with greater frequency, and he can act on the forecast at the precise leverage points his acuity or orrery shows him. The Imperium tries to do what Trazyn is already doing. The Imperium is not aware that the comparison applies. Onkari'kth, the witness this video gave you at the start, would have understood the implication immediately. A Necron Phaeron, even an illustrative one, would have recognized the inner vault as a workshop the moment he saw the dais. Trazyn's line, round 2041, same divergence point, new variables, would have placed itself in a long Necron history of long projects. The Necrons measure time in millennia. They have completed projects on those timescales before.
This one would simply have been the largest project a single Overlord has ever attempted to run privately, in a vault sealed against witnesses, with the most psychically resonant components in the galaxy installed as live elements. The Imperium of Mankind believes it is the live reality. It is. The Emperor of Mankind believes he is the original. He is. The Cicatrix Maledictum, the Era of Ruin, the return of Robute Guilliman, the resurrection of the Lion, the rise of the Tyrant of Badab, the discovery of the Star Child. Every event the Imperium experiences as history is, simultaneously, a single iteration that Trazyn the Infinite is watching from a chamber the size of a continent, on a planet at the edge of the Eastern Fringe, with the Golden Throne running quietly in front of him, and the Emperor of Mankind breathing peacefully on top of it. He has watched the iteration before. He has watched it succeed. He has watched it fail. He has not yet decided which one he will let stand.
The Imperium does not know it is being decided. Trazyn has not told them. He never will.